Hello, pen friends. Welcome to another episode of The Pen Habit. I'm glad to have you here for this review. Now, the pen for today's review was provided by the company Nemosine. I've talked about them before in a couple of other videos. You can check the links that appear up here in the right-hand corner for some of those videos. Excited to look at this one. This is another one they provided for review and giveaway, so we're going to go ahead and dive right in. The pen in question today is the Nemosine Neutrino. Now, the Neutrino is a small pen, more on that in just a second, made out of metal, and it is one of the newer offerings from the company. I think this came out, I want to say 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. I do remember when I reviewed my first Nemosine pen, this pen was still being teased, and I hadn't had a chance to try it, so when they sent it along, I was excited to get a hold of it. In any case, comes in this box, has a little formula here, and according to the website, this is the formula for the proton-proton reaction that generates neutrinos via nuclear fusion in the sun. And neutrinos are tiny little particles, subatomic particles, so if you were to take an atom and expand it to the size of a solar system, our solar system, then a neutrino would be about the size of a walnut. So that gives you an idea of how small they are. And from a little bit of reading, granted, I studied musical theater, not astrophysics, but apparently we are bombarded with neutrinos all day long, every day, and they kind of pass right through us. So the fact that they are very, very small particles actually makes a lot of sense when we start talking about the pen. So this is the Nemosine Neutrino, and it's a pretty small pen, which would make sense based on that whole neutrino name. So starts up here at the top, kind of a pointed, rounded point finial. You've got a clean lined clip here. The clip is just a little springy, but still pretty solid. It expands out and then comes into a cylindrical area. The cap terminates in this chromed cap band that says Nemosine on it. Then you've got another band here on the barrel, and the barrel tapers down to a rounded point at the end here. Now, this is a pretty small pen, as you can see. It's made of metal, and it is a little on the heavy side for a pen that is as small as this one is. This is the nickel finish. It comes in a variety of other finishes as well. And it's attractive. It's a little different than what I see from a lot of other things, but it's not an unattractive pen in any stretch of the imagination. So the pen cap screws off with 1 3/4 turn. It does have metal threads on the barrel here and plastic on the inside of the cap, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see that. So the threads are quite smooth. Then we come to this metal section. Now, I am generally not a huge fan of metal sections, and this pen is no different. It's very glossy and shiny and fingerprint prone and can get slippery if your hands tend to get a little sweaty like mine sometimes do, which I struggle with on any pens, but on this pen in particular, I find that a little bit troublesome for my grip because this section is minuscule. It is one of the smallest sections I've ever seen on any pen I've ever reviewed. So at its smallest point right here, it's 7.3 millimeters. Now, my preferred section grip is somewhere between 11 and 12.5 millimeters. So this is a very, very narrow grip. It's also not super long, so I often find myself holding the pen up around here. It's not terribly uncomfortable to hold, but it is too short for me to use unposted. This is a pen I must absolutely use posted. When posted, the cap is pretty heavy. It's about 16 grams, while the body of the pen is about 20 grams. So it's almost the same weight as the body of the pen itself. So it does feel a little unbalanced in my hand. I think this is a pen that would work really well for people with small hands. It's uncapped, or unposted rather, it's very nicely balanced and it doesn't feel too heavy. It's just the grip is a little too narrow for the way I prefer to use pens. So the Nemosine Neutrino comes with a number 5 size nib. This is a medium nib, and I will give you a little preview and say it is one of the best steel nibs I have ever used. It's a little dry, but it is super, super smooth. People ask me all the time, what's one of the smoothest nibs, I can get for under X price point. And from now on, under $50, I might have to say this Nemosine Neutrino nib is one of the smoothest nibs I've ever used in that price range, under 50 bucks. In any case, it is a standard international cartridge converter pen, comes with a converter and can take both long and short cartridges. The barrel is, or the tenon is metal, and with the barrel being metal, I wouldn't suggest trying to use this as an eyedropper. So that is the basic overview of the pen. Now, why don't we do some measurements and some comparisons, and then I'll show you how this thing writes. As mentioned a little earlier, this is a wonderfully smooth nib. It is, for better or for worse, also something of a dry nib. And dry and wonderfully smooth very rarely go hand in hand, but in this particular case, it's a really nice combination. So I'll show you the wetness of the nib first. It's not the wettest nib I've come across, I have to admit. It could be, the tines could be opened up a bit and wettened, but it's fairly dry. in a lot of ways, that's pretty good for some people, because I know a lot of people don't have access to Rhodia or Clairefontaine or Tomoe River paper for their daily work notes like I do, so they won't necessarily be able to use a really wet, juicy pen like I prefer personally. So this is a really good pen to use with less than ideal fountain pen papers. But even with the drier ink flow, this is just super, super smooth. It feels like it almost ought to have some baby's bottom, but it doesn't. It's that level of smooth, and that's actually pretty impressive. It's not something that a lot of retailers do, and certainly not at this price point. The pen has behaved really, really admirably for me, kind of across the board. So I didn't have any problems with hard starting. I didn't have any problems with skipping. I've had this pen inked and sitting for about a month, and I unscrewed the cap yesterday prepping for this review, and it wrote immediately. And it had been sitting nib up the whole time. So the plastic liner of the cap seems to do a really good job of keeping the nib wet, and I've been really, really impressed with how well this little pen writes. It does not, let's see, reverse writing. It's a little scratchy on the reverse writing, but it's still pretty good, and a much finer line you can see here. But it's really not, it's not too bad. A little bit of micro mesh on this reverse writing, and this would actually be quite a nice reverse writer as well. So all in all, I have to say this pen has been something of a surprise performance-wise. I always, and I don't know, it maybe not surprise isn't the right word, because I've been pretty consistently impressed with the other Nemosine pens, the Singularity and the Fusion that I've tried. Nib-wise, I have to say the nib on this Neutrino is probably my favorite nib out of any of the Nemosine nibs that I have tried up to this point. And I know they've got a new version of the nib. I don't know if it comes in this particular finish, where like the tip of the nib is kind of fire blasted, so it's got that like the fire blue treatment on it that looks really cool. I've seen it on the Goulet site and on the Nemosine site, and it looks pretty cool. So if I were to buy this pen, I'd probably try to get it with that finish on the nib, just because it's very different than anything else that's out there. But aside from that, it's a beautiful, beautiful writer. The only downside for me is the size, and I know there are people out there who specifically look for small pens, so I don't begrudge Nemosine for making one. I think they went a little overboard with the narrowness of the section here. It's just too narrow for my tastes. I can't say that I enjoy holding the pen, because I usually end up holding it right on the threads and the step down. And that's a little unfortunate. Otherwise, I suspect I'd use this pen a lot more than I have been using it, but the very narrowness of the nib and the slipperiness of the section kind of put this into it's a great writer, but it's not something I would pull out for a writing session. This is a to-do list pen, or a stick it in your pants pocket while you're shopping pen for me. If you like a pen with a little bit of heft, something that is very nicely made from a construction quality and has a beautiful nib on it, and you don't mind the smaller diameter, I think you'd really, really enjoy this Neutrino. Now, the Nemosine Neutrino, as I mentioned, comes in a whole variety of finishes. This is the nickel finish, and it lists on the Nemosine website for $30. That's a steal even at the list price. It retails for around $25, and that's about the price point I have seen it at through other retailers, which is also a steal. That puts this in the same basic price range as the Lamy Safari, the Pilot Metropolitan, and even the TWSBI Eco. This is, from a construction and nib quality, just as high quality as any of those pens, maybe even more so than some of them. I have been very, very impressed with this pen. The only downside is it's not going to be a pen for everyone simply based on the size. So the nice thing is it's inexpensive. You can get replacement nibs and nibs in different sizes for pretty inexpensively. So if you want a pen that will give you a chance to try different nib sizes, this is a good one to try. It's also not too terribly expensive. So if you try it and you don't love it, it's not like you're out several $100s. It's a $25 pen that is built like a tank. So anyway, thank you to the folks at Nemosine for providing this pen. I really do appreciate it. It's a beautiful pen, and I hope whoever ends up winning it in the giveaways that will be coming up will really, really come to love it. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down on the comment section on YouTube, or if you're over on the written review at penhabit.com, don't forget to go over there and check out the photos and the written review. You can leave your comments over there. And I try to answer as many of the questions as I can, but I just get too many YouTube comments to be able to get through all of them. So if I don't answer, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just I don't have enough time in the day to answer every comment that comes through on all my videos. Also, don't forget to head over to penhabit.com and check out the Inky Fingers notebook line. If you're not familiar with the line, I have a small line of travelers and pocket-sized notebooks available in currently blank, lined, and a currently inked log, so you can keep track of what inks you've got in your pens at any one particular time. And those are on penhabit.com as well. That helps to finance all the fun stuff I do here and get me to pen shows and that sort of thing. So love to have you check those out, maybe place an order for a notebook or two. And if you are in Europe, I've mentioned this on a couple of the currently inked episodes, but I am going to be having my notebook showing up in a couple of different European retailers, including pocketnotebooks.co.uk. They just placed a big order. And very shortly, La Couronne de Comte is going to be carrying the notebook line as well. In addition, here in the US, the notebook line is carried by Van Ness Pens at vanness1938.com. So if you're placing an order with any of those folks, don't forget to add on a couple extra notebooks while you're there. It helps me out, helps them out, helps you out. It's a win-win. So, all right. Thank you so much for watching this review. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some value from it. And we will see you here next time on The Pen Habit. Bye.